We just got done talking about hunting, and Roger, you spent a lot of time traveling, but you didn't always do it in a car, and you didn't always do it on a plane. You've got a lot of different transportation stories, don't you?
Yes. I'll start out with an airplane story. I went in the Navy, and I had never been in an airplane prior to my going in the Navy. And we were stationed in Ward Island, Texas, which was near the Corpus Christi Naval Air Base. And if you could go down to the Naval Air Base, and if there was a captain or some high officer traveling someplace, you could hitchhike to wherever you're going and depend, not knowing how you're going to get back. But we went there one day, and he was going up to Austin, Texas. Well, Austin is a college town, and sometimes there's women in college and sometimes there's men, but we thought that would be a good place to go. So we got on the airplane and we're ready to land in Austin, and he said, landing gear doesn't come down. My first airplane ride. He said, you sitting next to that lever, unbuckle that strap and then pump that lever and pump the landing gear down. So here I was, my first airplane ride, pumping the landing gear down. And I got her all the way down, and we landed safely, and everything was fine. That was my first airplane ride. Then we were in near Las Vegas. We had a Dean Foods meeting. I think it was the Dean Foods, or it might have been the Affy deal, but we were there. My wife was with me, Jenny, and I had called my daughter Brenda and Rick, my son-in-law, who were stationed in Las Vegas, to come on over and would stay a couple extra days. And on the last day, we're ready to leave. I said, would you like to go on a hot air balloon ride? And Brenda and Rick said, oh, yes. And Jenny, my wife, said, I think I have to pack. She didn't want any part of the balloon ride. So we went out in the field at 5 o'clock in the morning and get in this basket of this balloon. It must have had a dozen people in there. And they start up their little gas-fired burner, and the balloon inflates, and all of a sudden you're up in the air without any control of where you're going. And we were flying, or not flying, gliding around, ballooning around. I said, where are you going to land? He said, well, we never really know when you're in one of these. So after a half hour or an hour ride, I said, does anybody ever get hurt in one of these? He said, well, last week, somebody broke their kneecap. I don't know how that happened, but that was exciting to hear. When you wouldn't think anybody would get hurt in a balloon, but I've heard of people running into power lines and so forth, and I don't think I'll do it again. But anyhow, he said, when I say pull, you standing there, that happened to be me again. I'm always by the controls. He said, pull on this rope. When you pull on the rope, that opened up the hole on the top of the balloon and deflated it at a controlled rate. So he said, pull. So I pulled. The basket went through the top of an evergreen tree at about a 45-degree angle. We cleared the tree, and then we landed in a gated community right in front of a 3-car garage. You just pulled right there. We were only 2 feet away from the garage door. And here was the big balloon, and the gated community didn't exactly think too much of that. So one lady came out with her house coat on, her bathrobe, and she said, did you run out of gas? So we pulled the balloon, which was still partially inflated, into the cul-de-sac, and then deflated it completely, and the balloon filled up the whole cul-de-sac. Now we had to get out, and they wouldn't let anybody in to pick us up. So finally, after, I don't know if they talked to the police or what, they finally got our rescue vehicle out, and they picked us up, and we got our glass of champagne and our certificate, and we had our first and last balloon ride. It's pretty, but it's dangerous when you don't have any control where you're going. And a more exciting deal, I was out in Grand Tetons. We had a chance to go glider flying. And they had one passenger glider and a pilot. That glider was about a foot wide, and I got in. He said, keep your feet off the pedals. Well, I was having trouble finding a place to put my feet. And finally we take off, and they pull you up in the air, and then they disconnect the rope, and there you are. It's really a sensation. You just hear, and then you hit an air draft, and up you go. So that was fun. I said, where are you going to land? He said, well, if you don't land at the airport, it's very embarrassing. Then you get ridiculed. So we came into a nice glider landing at the airport. So that's my glider, balloon, and airplane. It wasn't all the same day, but it was pretty close.
You missed one of your airplane stories. Didn't you take a ride down from?
Oh, that one, that was exciting too. We were building a lagoon in Fort Atkinson, and Ray Carls had excavating equipment, and he was doing building the lagoon, moving the earth for us. And he came up to Green Bay. He said, "I'll pick you up in Green Bay." I think he had a T-38 trainer or something. He said, "We'll fly down, take a look at the project, and we'll fly back." I said, "Okay." So I get in the airplane. We're halfway down there. He said, "You ever do a barrel roll?" I said, "No." He said, "You want to do one?" I said, "Well, go ahead." So here we did a nice barrel roll. He said, "You still there?" He said, "You want to do another one?" I said, "Sure." So we did another barrel roll. That's quite a sensation when you see the sky up above.
I'll take your word for it.
So I did several things that I wouldn't do again.
You had one other story as well, where you were on the ground, but you were on the snow with your kids on the snowmobile.
Oh yeah, we were up at Peninsula State Park. I had an Evinrude snowmobile, and I said to Greg and Diane, "Let's go up to Peninsula Park and we'll take a nice ride in the park." So we could get, they were that size, we could get 3 people on it. And I said to Greg, "You want to drive it," which I shouldn't have done. And he
How old is he?
I don't know. He wasn't 16 at the time, and he didn't make a curve when we hit a tree, and there we were. And first you look around, anybody hurt? Well, they had having trouble breathing, but they got their breath and everything was fine. Now I looked at the damages. I said, "How am I going to get out of the woods?" Because one of the skis was all discombobulated. But fortunately, somebody in the woods was from Seymour, Wisconsin. He was a fellow canner, and I knew him. I said, "Would you take these kids back to the car?" He said, "Sure." I said, "I'll see if I think I can get this thing running." So I had a crescent wrench and a pliers and a screwdriver, and I disconnected that one ski, and it just wobbled, but I could use the other ski for control. I got back to the car, put it on the trailer, came home, brought it in the shop at the plant, and I worked 4 hours, and I got the thing all back in shape. I don't know what I'd done without the shop at the plant. So those are my experiences, and I'm still here.
So the real question is, did Jenny know about the snowmobile accident?
Yes, she did.
Did you tell her, or did the kids tell her?
Well, I'm sure the kids told her.
So you didn't lecture them in the car, let's not tell mom about this?
No, that doesn't work. You know that. If you don't want them to tell, don't say anything. So I'm fortunate that I'm still living, but I remember the exciting times. I did ride in a helicopter too, but that was a commercial. I don't know if you rode in a helicopter, but what I remember, you can smell fuel oil burning when you're in a helicopter because the rotor just drives that odor down into the cabin. I went from LaGuardia Airport over to one of the other airports in New York to catch a flight. So
I don't know that I would have wanted to have the same experience as you did with the other flights on a helicopter in New York. That could have ended very poorly.
I didn't have to go in when I told you about the balloon ride with I wasn't in the balloon, the guy from Poland.
Yeah, that's right.
So
you don't make a very good balloon salesperson, I'll tell you that.
I've heard about, in fact, there was somebody from our church denomination that one of the pastors wanted a balloon ride, and his wife gave him a balloon ride for a Christmas present or something, and they ran into a high tension line and he was killed while she was. So I kept thinking about that, thought I did it once, now we won't do it again.